Well, time now is for us to hit the big stories. We're hitting the road, we're hitting the ground running, and we're going to be talking about bread and butter matters. Believe you me, we're going to be talking about those matters that affect you, starting with our dealing with fuel pricing in the country and beyond. It is running amok. It is getting out of hand. Let's face the situation. But how do we deal with these problems? And how about the speakership tussle, the Council of State interacting with the Speaker of Parliament and the two sides, the minority and the majority? We'll be getting into those details on the big stories this morning with Kojo Poku, who is an energy analyst. He joins us. We also have Duncan Amwa, who is with COPEC, energy analyst as well. Edward Bawa is Member of Parliament for Bongo. He's a member of the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. All of them join us for this discussion, as well as Fritz Moses, Institute. He is with the Institute for Energy Security. All of them joining the conversation. But right in the studio, let me say a very good morning to Duncan Amwa, who is seated right next to me. Duncan, good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me.
Well, why is it that when I said good morning, I say your good morning backwards?
So you made me wake up 5 a.m. Just to beat traffic,
right,
to appear, because you summoned me here. So
we are grateful that you responded to the summons and that you are here.
I don't have an option.
When we speak to you on phone and all of that, you know, or Zoom, sometimes the networks. And so today be today. Let's also acknowledge Edward Bawa, who joins us via the phone lines, Member of Parliament for Bongo, member of the Mines and Energy Committee. Honourable Bawa, very good morning to you, sir. All right. We also have Fritz Moses with the Institute for Energy Security. Good morning. Good morning, Fritz.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. All right. So let's start. Let's Mr. Bawa, are you on the line? Can you?
I'm on the line. Yes. Please.
Great. Pleasure to have you. Just hold for me. I want us to set the tone for the conversation from right here in the studio, and then I'll come to all of you to share your thoughts. So this is the picture. For me, I have moved from purchasing fuel, and I stopped short of mentioning what I purchased, from 6.9 to 7.1 to 7.33 to 8.16 Ghana cedis per litre. And now I'm being told, I wasn't at the pumps yesterday, but I'm being told that if I go today, it would have shot up to something around 8.5. At some fuel stations, Total and others, 8.29. The question is, how are we going to resolve this crisis, and when will it end? Especially as we know that in this country, fuel prices always inch up. They never come down. Duncan Amwa. But let me just ask you this. I know that there are different components that go into the pricing of fuel, from the global prices to the cost of refining and targets, revenue that people are hoping to get on it, distribution and marketing costs. But what are the other things that go? I know taxes as well. Break it down for us. I want us to do that exercise today. What goes into the pricing of fuel?
So you have 3 stages of pricing. The first one is called ex-refinery position. Ex-refinery means you've processed crude into the different components or variables, petrol, diesel, kero, jet, fuel, all of the other products that you could get out of crude. Once you get the refining done, in calculating ex-refinery, you probably are looking at the cost of crude, right?
Right.
Plus the cost of refining, which is what they call tolling.
Right.
So that will give you the cost of the refined product. Crude having moved from, the base product to a refined product. Then you get it to probably the depot. So the second stage is called ex-depot. At that stage, government is saying, okay, I need taxes of the product. So I'm adding tax A, B, C, D. That will take you to ex-depot position. Then from ex-depot, you are looking at ex-pump.
Right.
So that's the final stage.
Right.
and that's where you add.
That is where you and I go and
that's what
get
eventually
our
that's what we pay for.
Right.
So 3 stages: ex-ref, ex-depot, and then ex-pump.
Ex-pump. Right.
So ex-ref, crude, and then the tolling. I mean, whatever it costs to process crude. So the actual cost of the product, that is it. Ex-depot, you are looking at taxes having been added at the depot position. Government says, okay, I need tax A, B, C, D. And then ex-pump, you are looking at margins, markups, whatever the fuel companies would also need in order to be able to keep
Because
running.
they need to get their margin to stay in business.
Stay in business,
Right.
yes, because they have made an investment that they would need to pay pump attendants for utilities and all that.
I
So
mean,
their
even Goyle, the state-run oil company, would need to make some markups because, I mean, SNIT invests in there, and ordinary Ghanaians also have their interest. And they must keep running, like you're saying.
And they must keep
So
running,
even they
and they
need
must
to.
pay pump attendants, and they must pay for light, they must pay for water used, they must pay for any financing costs that comes with building those stations or facilities or running them. So they add their margins, and then you come to the ex-pump price, which is the final figure that you see at the pumps. In all of this, however, there are 3 other significant variables. The stages of pricing set. When you come to the variables that also determine final pricing, ex-pump, there are 3 of them.
Okay, so 3 variables in addition, I mean, from the start, and then when it comes to 3 stages, and when it comes to the final part, there are another 3 variables.
You are looking at 3 variables that are encapsulated in the stages.
Right.
But they are very dominant.
Which are what?
Okay. The ex-refinery price, plus or minus, give or take, if you don't refine in-country, you would need to import, right? Because your refinery is not working. So you go to another refinery in another country to say, okay, I'm buying 40,000 metric. And then the cost of logistics, your insurance, freight, whatever it costs to move the product, I mean, to your country, FOB, is now what ex-refinery price will mean. So if you are refining at all, right? Let's say Ghana's crude, you decided to refine at all. Then TOR will charge their tolling in addition to the cost of the crude, right? And give you ex-refinery. But if you are buying from Rotterdam, Rotterdam will charge their tolling in addition to the crude. But you would still need to pay for freight, you need to pay for insurance, you need to pay for whatever demurrage.
Which is why you would want to have your own refinery.
Exactly. That's why you would want,
exactly. And maybe you rather export rather than have to bring it
and cut back the logistical costs.
Right.
But unfortunately, we are not refining. So you would need to necessarily import from Europe. Now, importing from Europe, you cannot go and say, I'm buying 10,000 metric. I have cedi, 10 million Ghana cedi. So you would need to convert your local currency into the dollar, the greenback, and then take it to Europe and bring the fuel. Now, the fuel gets to Ghana, and Ghana government says, look, I have only one legal tender, which is the cedi.
Right.
So you cannot trade in the dollar at the pumps. So that's where the conversion, the cedis exchange to the dollar, comes to play. If I have to sell and get my $10 million or Ghana cedi, 10 million Ghana, if previously the dollar was say 4 cedis to $1, it means that I would need about 10 million to get $2.5 million. If I forecast that at the time I'll be done selling, right, I probably am going to need about 11 million because the cedi is not stable.
Right.
To get the same 2.5 million, maybe the cedi to $1 would have moved from, say, 4.0 to about 4.2. The 0.2 in there, if I don't factor into my pricing, I would owe the supplier and I cannot pay.
Wow.
So they do what they call the forward rates, whatever.
Wow.
The forward forex. So that is added to ex-refinery position. So those 2 key components. How much you getting the product for FOB, probably Rotterdam here, and then the cost of your city's depreciation as far as your knockouts or net-offs is concerned.
Right.
Then when you are done, you come to add the taxes that we had discussed earlier.
Exactly. Which have been slapped on our petroleum
Exactly.
price.
The taxes, margins, markup, levies, and all of them. You slap all of that, you still come to the same ex-pump price position. But those two variables mentioned earlier, quite critical. The taxes, very local, right? The two variables, international market price. Ghana cannot determine how much a barrel of crude would sell for. We cannot determine how much a metric ton of, let's say, kero or petrol or diesel would sell for. We don't determine that.
Right.
So that is external. Then the CD dollar is quasi, internal, quasi external. How much of the reserves you have to be able to give to people who import to pay their suppliers.
Now, the Bank of Ghana, some experts, economists are saying that put out more dollars, like we usually do, but we know it's not a sustainable measure.
But that is only subject to how much Bank of Ghana has
available.
Itself. Exactly.
As a central bank.
Yes, subject to. If it has just $1 billion, it cannot put in 5 billion. So it will put in what it has. So it's semi, controlled. But the taxes, which is the third component, is purely a finance ministry job. So you would realize before we went into the deregulation proper, finance ministers will stand in parliament and read the budget and indicate how much fuel will be sold for, how much transport fares will be for. After deregulation, finance ministers still do get to go to parliament and either introduce, increase, or decrease taxes. So taxes is within our domain, jurisdiction. The CD dollar is quasi. Partially, we can manage it. Sometimes when people are importing so much, it's difficult to say you won't pay the supplier, and there's pressure on the dollar, the few dollars in the system. So if you put the three together, question is asked, can we manage these three such that the people of Ghana are not inconvenienced? If you do throw that question to most petroleum economists, the answer will be a yes, you can manage.
So the question is, why are we not able to manage the situation? Let me bring in Kojo Poku, an energy analyst as well. Kojo, good morning to you.
For you, and good morning to my brother Duncan and all your listeners.
Hi,
right. So Duncan has done us the favor of breaking down what exactly the fuel components are, what goes into the breakdown of when I go to a fuel pump and want to purchase fuel, what goes into that. But why has deregulation not worked for us the way we expected it to? And at the bottom of the matter is the fact that we have a lot of fine policy in this country that yields nothing. Why has deregulation not given us the results we sought when we went into that?
Well, we all praised deregulation, and most of us were champion of deregulation because they're under recovery for the industry, where government couldn't find money to pay the subsidies they promised, was beginning to basically make companies unprofitable. So all the industry players were very excited that in 2015, deregulation was introduced. We don't really have a full deregulation, because if you look at all these windows that we do every bi-weekly, we do a window. That is not proper deregulation. It is just a way where MPA now gets these companies to do what you call a predictive price of which is not binding. Okay, so for me, I have said that I don't know why MPA does those calculations, because it's not binding. It's really every company can price as they wish. Now, for me, the reason deregulation has not worked is not when we have upward adjustment. It's when we have downward adjustment. Whenever the prices go down, the OMC do not pass on the downward reduction, and they now would rather increase their, what Duncan explained, their marketers and dealers margin. And their excuse is that, they were squeezed on their profits, and they are trying to recover what they call losses, which is where I have a problem with. As a businessman, I have no problem with people trying to recover money. So upward adjustment when international prices go up, yes, they have to increase the prices to be able to provide that service to you and be able to buy more to replace what they have sold. So I have no problem with when the prices are going up and how deregulation works. My problem lies in the fact that when deregulation does not enforce that the OMCs now also have to pass on the savings that we are supposed to get when prices are going down. Today, we are seeing the Brent at 106 as at yesterday's trading. So let's say in a couple of months' time.
Actually, currently, Kojo, it has hit $111 per barrel. $111.
So current $11 maybe through, but these are for. And let me say something. These 1,111 is not for current delivery. It's for delivery in April and May. Okay, and that is a way that for me, the system in Ghana also needs to be looked at well in terms of how pricing is done, because we use future prices to determine current prices. Maybe because the companies need to be able to replace the products that they are selling in a way it makes sense. But what they're using, if you say that today, Plat is this. Maybe the Plat price you have today is for 2 months delivery, okay?
Right.
We normally would have bought the current price. We have probably bought the current product about a month or two ago before it got into Ghana, before it got to your pump. So the 111 that you are looking at is for April or May delivery, okay? So now the point I was making is that I don't have a problem, and we have to educating Ghanaians on the fact that when there is war in the world, prices of products go high. But now, let's say 2 months from now, these 111 prices now come to, let's say, 80, a reduction of about $30, okay? Then you realize that maybe the differential in the forex is not that much, maybe a marginal. But you realize that the prices from the OMCs is still high. It has not reduced equivalent by $30. That is where my problem is with deregulation. Then when you go and ask the OMC, why have you not passed on the savings to Ghanaians? What they will tell you is that, when prices were high, we were squeezed on our margins, so trying to recover. What are you trying to recover? I honestly don't believe that anybody will take a license from MPA, pay over $500,000 a year, and it is not by force to be an OMC, okay? Now, you go into OMC business willingly. You agree to pay $500,000 a year, and you're telling me that you're making losses year on year? Rubbish. It's not true. Okay? So that is the problem. The problem is that I have said, and my brother Duncan has also added his voice, that we should cap the OMC margin. Look, if deregulation
it's easier said than done, isn't it? It's easier said than done. I mean, we even saw when government intervened and Goyle's leadership was called into a meeting, chief of staff and all of that. Their prices are back up again, even the state producer.
Why is it easier said than done? When we say cap the dealers and marketers margin, it is not something you just get up and do. One of the requirements of licensing is that you provide your audited accounts to MPA. Okay? So MPA can analyze what every business needs to run. Now, I have always said that fuel, petrol, and diesel should be regulated products. It is more or less an essential product, very important to the economy. So it shouldn't be a free-for-all product. It is not like somebody in Abusioka selling shock absorbers or brake pads. Okay? What you need is certain tight regulations in the profit that is made on these products.
Right.
As it stands now, there's no such thing. Okay. So anybody can make any profit they want.
Right. Kojo, just hold it there for me. Hold it briefly. I'll come right back to you. And Honorable Bauer and Collins, just hold it for me. Duncan Amwa is on a time leash, so let me just do this with him, and I'll come to the rest of you gentlemen, so we share our thoughts on this. But Duncan, so moving forward, we are where we are. It is what it is. How do we get out of this, e-levy or no e-levy? I mean, I'm just throwing in that because you know of the dynamics. Some have said that if we don't have it, we might slap the taxes on petroleum products. So what is a practical way of getting out of this? Is it what Kojo Poku is saying about the OMCs and cutting their cost and profits?
We've sent memos to the Ministry of Finance earlier. We have the similar position that government should ease on taxes. But looking at the economic position of the country currently, it might not be prudent to ask for taxes to be taken out. However,
to be taken out,
to be
of the petroleum component.
Yes, it might not be prudent. They will not do it simply.
They will not do it.
Yes.
Is it that they can't do it, or
however, what we need to draw their minds to, again, and I would repeat this 1,000 times over, the government is also on the market. It does not import fuel. The government is buying at the same rate that you and I are paying for. The police vehicles that we are fueling as of this morning, a lot across the country, right? Government doesn't have a filling station. It doesn't import fuel. So whatever the price is, government will pay for it. Whatever the tax build-up is, government will pay for it. So invariably, government is overtaxing its own self, because if you are consuming 5% of the market, right, whatever taxes the market pays, you would also pay. It would increase government expenditure. We are gaining a lot of windfalls because, like you rightly indicated, it's $110.6, $411 currently. We had budgeted projected to get 61.25
right
for 2020. You've already
That's almost twice what we budgeted.
Almost a double. Call the BDCs, call importers, call oil traders, right, to a meeting and say, look, we realize prices are getting out of hand. We have made some substantial savings here, right, because we are doubling what we are also producing to export. Just call them. What is the difference? $18 million. Okay, we've made about 40. We can give you the 18, sustain prices, don't go and increase it. When you do this, you are managing. But when you sit and think that you should collect the windfall monies that is being generated,
right,
and also collect the full stream of taxes, that
especially when the stabilization levy is also not cushioning the
it's not cushioning. You are doing nothing. You are definitely going to leave your economy hanging. And as it stands, government itself will be the one that will complain the most at the end of the accounting year. Because again, like I indicated, if it was 5 cedis, what you buy it for the police, the liters won't change. A car that takes 100 liters will still take 100 liters, even at 8 cedis, right? But you will pay more as a state. So eventually, not subsidizing or not realizing the need now to step in is going to cost all of us. It's costing the ordinary people already. When you go to the pumps, for those who needed 500, 300 to fill their tanks, today when you go, you need to pay more, almost double that amount. The ordinary person would feel it and so will complain immediately. But it will take government almost 11, 12 months, right, to realize that it has overshot its expenditure simply because it sat unconcerned. It put the 10 fingers to Nidemrifa, like they say in Chi, right, and watched. Things are going to get bad. And I have said this, I'll repeat.
You think things are going to get worse?
They are going to get worse.
What is your projection?
See?
We're already past 8. Are we going to hit 9?
We would hit 9 before March comes to an end.
We'll hit 9 cities before March.
We would hit 9. It is the easiest calculation anybody could do. You were at 102, right, a few days ago. You've done 111 as of this morning. Ukraine, Russia don't seem to be ending any moment soon. Ukraine is calling for backup from the EU, right? US is also looking at ways it would. So,
in other words, as long as this goes on, it's just going to mean worse.
You recall we spoke some time ago and I said we could hit the 120 in no time.
Right.
Mark this. Probably in a week from now, $120 is quite feasible. And once you reach that, and also considering the pressure on your city, 9 Ghana cedi at the end of March is very close. Very, very close. And if the finance ministry is listening, this is the time to act because your economy is going to be badly damaged as a result of these fuel price increases. Transport operators have done 15.
They are threatening.
I sit on a platform with all of them. They are complaining bitterly. Now they say they increased fares and 3-4 days later we have increased fuel prices again. Yes, it's legitimate. So everything is just rising by the day. Food, everything. And I don't think that this is what the economy needs. So if you are managing Ghana's finance at this point, you should be having crunch meetings with the likes of Kojo Poku,
right,
the likes of Bawa, the likes of everybody that is interested.
I mean, it's a national problem.
You should have a thorough discussion. What do we do? Let us put the two streams, upstream, downstream, on the table. Look at the revenue expectation and what is being realized currently.
Right.
You may be able to do certain net offs. But if you sit and say, well, there's nothing we can do, the state doesn't have money. The state will cough out money that it doesn't have eventually to UTAG. It will cough out money to the teachers. It will cough out money to the nurses, the doctors. Because eventually, labor will be up in arms very shortly. Because they can't take their take-home pay home. There's a lot of crisis building up.
Reminds me of the transport unions and the fact that they want cost of living allowance. But thank you so much, Duncan Amwa, for giving us your time. You're on a tight one this morning, but thank you so much for giving us some of your time.
I shall be back very soon.
Right. Kojo, so let me quickly come to you. I'll give you a minute because I had to interject. And especially even considering the fact that we're told and we've seen the government machinery being rolled, and you go to certain places, cars are running. Even when people are, having functions and the rest, for hours, cars are running, V8s are running. Kojo, your final point, and then I'll come to Edward Bauer.
Well, the person whose Land Cruiser is questioning while the person is in a meeting because the air conditioning is on. That's not my fault. I mean, they get all these coupons, and all government appointees get these coupons. And so they don't know how it hurts. And that's why they probably don't see the urgency, as Duncan said, to call a crunch meeting to see how we resolve this problem. Look, like I said, in every situation, there is a need to act and probably throw the book out of the window and look at the streetwise and the street approach. In the UK, the business secretary, who is the Ghanaian, Honorable Kwatin, has to now put a cap on the energy prices, because the rate at which the energy prices were going in the winter was basically going to hurt the poor and then the elderly in the UK. So they put a cap on the energy prices. I think we need drastic measures to basically say the Ghanaian. Yes, when the going is good, we all know that we can get a little bit more, but this time the going is bad. And when the going is bad, it needs drastic measures and streetwise measures. Like Duncan said, to sit, abate, and think that you don't care and the government doesn't have money will not resolve this problem. And the longer it goes on, you might act too late and you might not get a solution at that point.
Let me come to Honorable Bauer, who is who is a member of Mines and Energy Committee. I want us to look at Parliament's role in resolving all of this. But first, I want to take a look at whether it makes sense as a country in the position we find ourselves, especially as we are producing the black gold now, and how we have treated or managed TOR, the Tema oil refinery. Because we could have saved ourselves a lot of the shocks we are feeling now if we had managed TOR better. So I want you to briefly address that before we go into Parliament's role in resolving all of this.
Good morning to Kojo and then Duncan. First, I will address the issue of TOR. So even assuming that TOR was running smoothly, and assuming that TOR could produce the capacity, the consumption levels that Ghana has, TOR will have to procure crude, and therefore the price of crude in the international market would have definitely affected even TOR's level of procurement in terms of the amount of money the outlay they will have to put. Because when you hear of, like Duncan was talking earlier on, when they talk about the ex-refinery price, it is either from your own local refinery, after they have done all the cost in processing the crude and going through the fractionations to get the various petroleum products, or the issue of importing the refined product and you including freight and what have you. So irrespective of whatever the case is, you would have still had the issue of prices of crude oil going up in the international market, affecting our export prices. So that is something that you need to do. But of course, obviously, we could have, and even if you look at all our petroleum agreements, we have what we call compulsory supply of crude oil by IOCs, and for that matter, the Ghana National Oil Company, to the states in times of what they call it, challenges. But that being said, the catch there is that even if the IOCs were supposed to produce crude for you to be able to process in Ghana because you have a refinery, they will sell it to you at the going market rate. So that is part of the condition in all the petroleum agreements that are there. And so it tells you that, yes, the refinery would have been better, or would have been better for us. It may inch the price a bit down. But my brother, if you look at the factors, beyond just the international price that we do not have control over, because there are other geopolitical issues, the issue of weather, a lot of other factors that can hinge on that. There's also the element, there are two elements that I think the government could have looked at very seriously. And because of those things, we are having challenges. One is the exchange rate. Duncan had explained to you very clearly that, look, they buy the product in dollars. They come and sell in cedi. So anytime there's a depreciation of the cedi against the dollar, what happens is that there is what we call forex loss. The forex loss is a liability that the OMCs or the whatever the bulk distributors or other things will not shoulder. So it's a liability that will be part of the cost that will go through. So it becomes a pass-through cost that will be reflective at the pump station. And so your issue of stabilizing your currency is important. We are just exaggerating and thinking that, because of the prices that are going up, in the international market, that is the only contributing factor to our current situation. But you and I know that is not true. Just in the last 2 months, the cedi has depreciated about 7.6% against the dollar.
Right.
Indeed, it tells us very clearly that it's now the worst performing currency in Africa. So it gives you a fair idea that it is not just the prices of crude in the international market that are going skyrocketing that is causing this problem. The other problem is the fact that our cedi is not performing well against the major currency. So it is something that government will have to look at. Government will have to work with the central bank to see how they can stabilize the cedi, and then to stop the downward movement of the cedi. So that's one thing. The second point, and my brother, that's the part I'm trying to make, is that the government must also begin to start looking. Duncan had made a point that made a lot of sense. Because of the fact that prices of crude are going up, we are also making a lot of windfalls upstairs. When I use the upstairs, I'm talking about the upstream in terms of export, and even in terms of our taxes that we'll get from our IOC because of the amount of money now they have to get as a result of the high prices of crude.
Right.
The question is that if you look at even the 2022 budget, the benchmark revenue was hinged on $62 per barrel. So it means that government had made its own projection that if prices did not go below $62 per barrel, we will meet our targeted petroleum revenues target. I don't know what I'm making sense.
Right, you are.
So what it then meant was that anything beyond $62 per barrel was going to be a windfall for government. And so as we speak now, because we have moved now into the neighborhood of 100, it tells you that government is making huge windfalls upstairs in terms of export and in terms of taxation and other things on on the IOC.
But school me here, if you may. Yes, we did project $61 to $62 in terms of the pricing. And now we're having this windfall. But did we have a plan for what we would do with the windfall? Is that not part of the problem?
No. So it is not a question of the plan. You see, you are looking at revenues that are available to you. I'm using that, and I'm going to explain why I made that point. That you have a situation where you have a windfall. So you are getting money that actually you didn't budget for. You felt that you didn't budget for. So you are making those money. So you then come into the downstream. And then you come to the downstream and say, these monies were meant to create revenues for me. If that is the case, if I'm making such amount of monies upstream, then in the downstream where my people are supposed to be consuming, let me see how I can bring that down. If I bring that down, it doesn't affect my petroleum revenues. I know what I'm making sense.
Right, you are.
It doesn't affect my petroleum revenues. So government can tell, and I'm making a point. If you look at, Duncan gave you the three major stages of our pricing.
He did,
the ex-refinery price. He gave you the ex-depot, and he gave you the the ex-pump pricing. Now, if you look at the post the ex-refinery, all that we have there are taxes. And my brother, with your permission, you have the energy debt recovery levy, you have the road fund levy, you have the energy fund levy, you have the price stabilization recovery levy, you have sanitation pollution levy, you have energy sector recovery levy, you have special petroleum tax, you have primary distribution margin, you have bus margin, you have fuel marking margin. These are all packed between the ex-depot and the ex-refinery. And these are all attributable to government. My question I then ask is that, if these things are supposed to be used in funding specific activities, and that would now, because you have no control over the the international price, and for that matter, the ex-refinery, you have no control over that because that is set up by companies. Then one of the things you should have been looking at is that these windfalls you are getting upstream in terms of the sale of the good can make up for any reduction in this level of taxes that we have. I don't know if I'm making sense. So that your targeted revenue, petroleum revenues, will still not suffer. But at the same time, you will be cushioning your citizens. You'll be cushioning businesses. You'll be cushioning the cost of transportation. That has a cascading effect on all other things.
Right.
And so your question, you ask, what will be the role of Parliament can be in this regard? The role of Parliament in this regard is purely advocacy, and I will say why I say it's advocacy. The reason is that Parliament does not set taxes. Taxes are brought to Parliament for approval, and they are set up by government and then brought to Parliament for approval. Two, Parliament does not set up the monetary policy, and for that matter, control our currency, manage our currency. It is the central bank that does that. And then the last but not the least, Parliament does not also set up the prices of crude in the international market. So the only level
I do get, Honorable Bawa, I do get the fact that Parliament doesn't do all of these things. It is the executive that is in control of the purse strings. But you have some oversight in terms of being legislators. You can put in place certain measures to enforce accountability, right? I mean, in an instance like this, is Parliament going to sit down like a very docile arm of government and not react in any way? You have powers to invite ministers, like the finance minister, to Parliament to answer certain questions. I mean, something must be done, because if we follow on this trajectory, like Duncan said, it only means one thing. We could hit $120 per barrel very soon. That will be reflected on the ex-pump price at the fuel stations. And guess who's going to pay? All of us. So how do we resolve it?
Unfortunately, Ben, the challenge is that our Constitution states very clearly that Parliament does not have power. Remember that all these taxes that we have on the petroleum products are supposed to be underpinned by laws. So there are bills that are brought, that are enacted into laws, and it is that empowers the agency to be able to exact those taxes on us. The question is that the Constitution tells us very clearly that Parliament cannot pass a law that would compromise the existing revenue levels of government. So that's what the Constitution makes. So we do not. So that's why I use the word that at best is advocacy. At best is to ask for information. So, for example, I could get up and say, I'll file an agent question to ask the Minister of Finance, in the face of all these challenges that we have, would he consider the reduction of that? And all he will come to do is to tell us his position. But Parliament, for example, going so much to say that, look, we are based on these things, we want to contemplate removing, for example, the SPT, because the SP, that's the special petroleum tax, has a big issue for them.
Right.
You do not have powers. The Constitution bars you from it. And that's why I say it is an issue of advocacy. rather than
Okay.
ours to be able to
Point made there, Bawa. Let me just hold it there and bring in Fritz Moses.
If your car is not driving, move to the side. What are you doing here?
Okay, quite a bit of a tussle out there. Fritz Moses is with the Institute for Energy Security. My apologies for keeping you so long. I just wanted us to look at some of the basic issues, what goes into pricing, why we find ourselves where we are. And now from Parliament, and it appears our hands are even tied. We're fettered, no way forward. But from where you sit, as an institute that churns out policy on these matters as well, suggestions about what we ought to be doing, what do you see in terms of any different perspective to what has already been said, and how do you feel we can emerge from this situation, Fritz?
All right. Thank you once again. I think a lot has been said by Kujo, by Duncan, of course, also the Honorable MP. At IES, what we believe and what we have been saying for quite some time now, beginning earlier last year, was that yes, there's a better option for us to look at the windfall that government is making from our upstream sector, in a sense that where we are selling fuel at higher prices or oil at higher prices on the international markets, we are rather feeling a negative effect locally by consumers. And of course, Duncan has mentioned also the fact that the government itself is also feeling the pain of it. What we believe is that it will be necessary and important for government to listen. I believe this even presents a better opportunity for government to actually do something about the current price hikes that we've been experiencing over the past few months. Because in essence, the options remain clear: increase the prices on the international markets for oil. Earlier on, we had been saying in the past few months that government could look at ways of cutting down some of the tax components in the price holders. We believe it's still on the table for government to consider. Again, it will come on the back of government, of course, also squeezing itself in its expenditure, because at the end of the day, if revenues are increasing and government expenditure keeps rising and remains stagnant as it's been for several years, then of course the government will not be the revenue that it's looking at. In a position where government is looking at increasing revenue, you should also look at how we can also squeeze itself or reduce its expenditure to be able to undertake the policies, and of course for consumers and citizens to also benefit from that increased revenue. Otherwise, we don't see how continually looking at innovative ways of increasing revenue and still maintaining the expenditure rates the government has been a helpful matter in this situation.
So pretty interesting. It makes for very interesting reading. If you go back just a few months, and we're still in the first part of the year, you would realize that our country has been in the top 10 in terms of countries that are selling fuel products at the highest, in Africa or on the continent. And now we're faced with, the situation in Ukraine and Russia, and we have the e-levy, which has also not been passed, and we're being told that it also has its own implications on the economy. So from where you sit, is there any hope? What Duncan said about the fact that very soon we're going to see oil prices hitting $120 to the barrel, $120 to the barrel, and that prices can only go up. That by end of March would likely be at 9 cedis. Is that reflective of what you have been gathering, the information you've been gathering as well?
Well, we certainly don't see prices going that far on the local markets. But then, of course, the indications point to an upward rise again, of course, on the international market. That will reflect locally. We expect this trajectory to continue, perhaps to the end of the second quarter of the year. But then again, it's all bodes well for the government, for us consumers, if all stakeholders, as I mentioned earlier, the BDCs, the importers, are all engaged by government officials to consider how it can also, as a government, cater for some of the costs that they're incurring. Because at the end of the day, if prices are rising on the international markets, if demand is rising, OPEC Plus is not looking at increasing its scheduled output of $400,000, 400,000 barrels per day today when they meet. It wouldn't happen that they will increase it, even if there have been several calls from the US, from the international IEIA and all the other institutions that have been calling for extra barrels of crude on the market. That's not, we don't see that happening anytime soon. And so, of course, with demand increasing, you'll still see prices are rising, and that will reflect locally negatively too. So we must, we shouldn't, I believe governments would really be listening now because of the extent of the rises that we've been seeing. And of course, also the depreciation of the city that has not been helpful in the markets at all.
So your projections would be exactly what? Let's say by end of March, what are your projections?
If you look at by end of March, it may rise above 8 cities, 50 pesos, but we are very bearish on it reaching 9 cities. We believe it will reach around 8 cities, 50 pesos for some of the waves.
Right. Kojo, so and grateful you stayed with us, Kojo Poku. So we've digested all of these issues and we've looked at the different components. What in the short to medium to maybe even long term can we do in respect of TOR, for example? Can we do in respect of the exchange rate? Can we do on the taxes that we've slapped on petroleum products? That one, it appears there's not going to be any movement on, especially as we are where we are in terms of the economy. And can we do to ensure that we have some proper regulation of pricing so that these wild fluctuations don't keep happening? Because one thing we can bet, when fuel prices go up, they never come down. Deregulation is not working. So for you, what do we do in the short to medium term?
TOR has been sitting idle for the last almost a year, and it's been used as a political football. As I always keep saying, nothing has been done. I heard a new board is being sworn in today, and maybe they can start work. But obviously, from what is on the horizon and the problems of TOR, the pertinent problems are not short-term solutions. There's medium to long-term, because the huge investment needed for TOR, it's not a short-term thing. Now, whether anybody can go in today and start getting crude next month, I know they've been trying for the last 6-7 months, and they still can't get crude. Okay, since the IMC went in there, Interim Management Committee went in there, they never refined because they could not get crude, because they were not in the right position to be able to negotiate crude into the refinery. So they've been in there for 8 to 9 months and nothing. Okay, so I don't think there's a short-term solution to TOR. Medium to long-term, possible. In terms of some of these things, last year, January, myself, Duncan, and IES wrote a petition to the MP and said that, look, the way the deregulation is working does not favor the average down here. Please, let's do something about it. There was a committee that was set up, okay? We went into meetings, we did presentations. MPA held a forum at Fiesta Royale. After that, nothing. We've not heard anything. My sources tell me that, well, they are their recommendations through the levels of government, ministry, cabinet, and stuff like that. But I would have thought that we, the people who petitioned, that we wanted a review and something done, you should have come back to us and said, look, after the committee started, these are what we said. You brought petitions, you brought your presentations, but this is what we are presenting. And we would have known what's going on. But nothing. We are still in the dark what they decided. The issues are not knee-jerk approaches, and everybody is very clear. I pray that the powers that be, which is the U.S. and the European Union, can put pressure on the OPEC countries to increase production. If that happens, then we might get some respite, okay? Because the Europeans and the American economy also cannot stand a $120 a barrel economy, because we would all face the same problem. So the problem is not Ghana specific. We're going to have problems, putting the fact that we just came out of COVID and economies are trying to recover, okay? So let's hope that we don't get to the 120 and the Americans and the EUs will be able to put pressure on OPEC countries to increase their production. Those are some of the things that can help the situation. If not, then we all have to brace ourselves for the impact.
Right. I would like to say a big thank you to Fritz. Fritz, thank you for joining the conversation. I just want to keep, Kojo, do stay with us. Yes. Duncan Amwa had to take leave of us, but Kojo, do stay with us, and we still have Edward Bauer. Fritz, thank you so much for joining the conversation. We're moving it a notch from here. But before I bring in the bit about the Speaker of Parliament, just to wrap this leg of the conversation. Edward, so with all that you've said, you're basically saying that there's no way forward as far as Parliament is concerned. The Finance Ministry must shoulder, the situation. We must deal with it from the central bank as well. And that's the only way forward, because the taxes are not going anywhere, are they?
Yeah, so the taxes are not going anywhere. But in the course of the discussion, I think that, Ben, you have given me an idea to at least know what is the government's position now on what they call it, the level of taxes vis-a-vis the windfalls you are making. And so I believe that today in Parliament I'll file an urgent question to the Minister of Finance, because if you look at
you believe today you'll file an urgent question in Parliament?
Urgent question, yeah.
Are you going to file it, or do you believe you will?
I will do that. I'll share a copy with you even if I finish. I can share a copy with you.
Right.
And the reason being that if you look at the three factors that affect the export prices, two of them are within the domain of the Minister of Finance. That's the issue of taxes and the issue of managing the cedi. And so he will be in the position to be able to tell Ghanaians what the position of the government is in regards to this. So it's an idea that has come up there. But that being said, I still think that, and this is my personal opinion, I still think that there are certain taxes, and I said this the last time when I was on your studios, that there are certain taxes that if you take them off, it would not affect the services for which they are supposed to fund. I've always stated this. I've indicated that if the issue of the SPT, that's a special petroleum tax, was supposed to augment petroleum revenues in terms of targets of petroleum revenues, it has at least its usefulness. At the time that we introduced it, crude prices were as low as $30 per barrel in the international market. And that's why we brought in there to plug the holes that we were talking about. Now we're talking of a neighborhood of about 111, as you stated. So it clearly indicates that it has at least usefulness. So it's a recommendation I think that government can take a second look at. The second point that is also very important for me to look at, and I stated that every assembly in Ghana pays on a quarterly basis 120,000 Ghana cedis for sanitation fee. And so if every place in Ghana falls under either a municipal assembly, a metropolitan assembly, or district assembly, it means that the cleaning of those areas have already been taken care of. If that is the case, what is the business of us having that 10% on for what we call sanitation and pollution levy? And so that can equally go. But now, the other point that I need to make, and this one we should be very frank with each other. And the issue is this whole idea of excess capacity charges that are charged on our power product, our petroleum product. And the issue is that they are supposed to use it to retire the excess capacity charges that we charge. As we speak, there has not been any indication that there's excess capacity in the system. There has not been any indication. Indeed, last time we asked the minister to give us where exactly the excess capacity is coming from, we didn't know where it was coming from, because you can only declare excess capacity when you declare availability.
Right.
And most often than not, any time that even one plant goes off, mostly we run into trouble. And so it tells you very clearly that excess capacity is just a sham. And the last time we also called the Minister of Finance to come and tell us how much they are paid for excess capacity. What they did was that they came and bundled us some figures to us that these were things they had paid to some particular IPP. The truth of the matter, if my brother listen to me very well, the truth of the matter was that the Chamber of Independent Power Producers had come out to say that no, those things were not excess capacity. They were charges, the payment for power used. So it tells you that 20% they put on petroleum products as the energy sector recovery levy is something that can go out. So I think I believe that there must be a debate around these things. And that's why I agree with Duncan when he indicates that the government must sit down today. You see, it's an issue about the lack of consultation and lack of trying to take ideas from all other sides. Let's all sit and see what can we still keep on our price builder, that what can we take out from our price builder that will not affect any other person. So that's the angle that we should be.
Okay. Let me just chip in. Let me just chip in this bit just to wrap up finally on this. The urgent question you're going to pose, is it going to be directed at the The energy minister or the finance minister? Which of them?
No, it's going to be directed at the finance minister. And I know why I deliberately said the finance minister.
Right.
The reason being that out of the three, there are three factors that affect the prices.
Right.
Prices of crude oil in the international market. Two, the exchange rate, and three, taxes and levies. If you look at the exchange rate and taxes, they fall under the Minister of Finance. The price of crude, the energy ministry does not actually control that. And so the appropriate minister to handle this will be the Minister of Finance.
Right.
To be able to answer those questions for us.
All right. Thank you very much. So I just, in the next few minutes, just very briefly, I want us to take a quick stab at this issue to do with the Council of State calling on the Speaker of Parliament to deepen the sort of interactivity or consensus on the floor of Parliament. But don't you forget, we'll return to the energy conversation, fuel prices, because we'll be coming to a fuel pump near you. Makojo Poku, starting with you, does this add anything? Does it change anything? The sort of body language, the rhetoric we've seen from Parliament, and the majority side has dug its heels in when it comes to something like the e-levy. And we've heard the First Deputy Majority Leader state categorically that the next time the e-levy is tabled, he will derobe and he will exercise his right to vote. We've heard from the minority side say that that will not happen and that we can't guarantee that we'll not see violence again. The Council of State stepping in, is it from your end going to resolve anything? Will it change anything?
No, it would not. Okay, look, let me tell you, and the little I know about how Parliament run, and if I'm wrong, my brother Power can correct me. The majority leader, who is the charge of government business in Parliament, is more like the coach of a football team. Every coach would have his 3-plan, okay, the strategy to play at one team to differ from the strategy to play a different team because of strength, positioning, and stuff like that. When you have only one plan, okay, and then you cannot play other teams. The point I'm making is that in the past, we had a strategy as when we have majority in Parliament, and we have that strategy, we take something in, we use our numbers to pull it through. This is a time when we had a hung Parliament.
Right.
And I don't mean to slant anybody, but I don't think the people in Parliament understand what a hung Parliament is. It means you do not have the numbers to do the legislative agenda that you otherwise do if you had majority. So what does that call for? It calls for a different set of strategy. If you look at the way the majority is basically trying to move things through Parliament, you don't get the feeling that they think that they need a new strategy. When you are in a hung Parliament, there is consensus built, okay? There is compromise. There is the need, okay, to also withdraw and take on board some of the agenda of the other side. It's the only way you get what you want done.
Okay.
Now, how difficult is that?
And Kojo, sorry, but you have to be brief on this point. So just go ahead, but bear that in mind.
So, because how difficult is that when you know that it is what you need to do? So it's either an illusion that the majority side does not think that there is a hung Parliament, or they just don't have a different strategy. And it doesn't take anybody else to be able to figure this out. If they've been watching the play of politics in other countries, you will know what happens in the UK Parliament, what happens in the US Congress. When this problem arises, the strategy they take. And
right.
That's what we expect the majority to do.
All right. Let me come to Edward on this bit as we wrap the conversation. So you are part of the minority. Why are you willing to bend a little? Are you going to be a bit more malleable on the back of what the Council of State has been saying, interacting with both sides in Parliament? Are you going to be malleable a bit? Look, Professor Atuguba is saying that it may be terrible, it may not be the best thing we need, the e-levy, but we need it to shore up the economy. What is your take?
So if what I'm reading in the media is anything to go by, what the Council of State is doing is the issue of those chaos that normally underpin some of the activities we do in Parliament. But the issue of the e-levy is, you see, and I was listening to Kojo Poku, and I'm trying to make a point. If you've observed, Ben, if you observe very carefully, you realize that our minority leader, he speaks less when it comes to the, the e-levy issue. since these confusions happened, he has been very measured in even his public utterances. He's been very measured because he knows that it falls within the leadership and that there must be the issue of, conversation on both sides. But if you have a situation where the leadership of the majority and consistently they bring out statements that seem to irritate you, you have a situation where the first deputy speaker, you still can open your mouth and state that, oh, when the time comes and you are even to study, you get up and come and do this. And you say it with that level of arrogance. And I'm seated at my corner. I said, okay, let's wait and see if you can do it. So then you have entrenched position. That's the first point. Two,
so on that first point, just briefly, I'm sorry, but very briefly, is that to state that since he has, put that threat, so to speak, out there, you are also massing your forces and you'll match them to ensure that he cannot vote? Is that the point?
You can take my word to the bank. He will be matched squarely on that.
So if the first deputy attempts voting on the e-levy, what we saw before might happen again?
I don't know what will happen, but the point I'm telling you is he will be resisted.
He will be resisted.
He will be resisted. He will be resisted. That you can take to the bank. It's an assurance I'm giving you. However, what I think that we should begin to start looking at is the fact that, look, we have made some proposals that if we, you see, the issue of making resources available for government, government development must not necessarily be as a result of trying to look for more money. You can also look at cutting on expenditure.
Okay.
We have given government areas that we can look at to cut expenditure and still be able to make up that 6.9 billion.
Okay.
Unless government is not telling us the truth, then we'll have a challenge. Because
Edward,
if you have not been able to account for some of the money that we have given to you, why do you think that we should be comfortable giving you more money? And that is the issue.
Okay.
And they shot themselves, my last point, they shot themselves in the foot when we said that, look, you have been creating the impression that part of the challenges that we have today is because of the COVID activities, even though we have said that it's more because of the election expenditure, election-related expenditure.
Right.
But you say it is COVID. Then we say that, look, if that is the case, the COVID funds, can we have a bipartisan committee to investigate how the COVID funds were used, just to see the transparency nature of it? You have a first deputy speaker sit there after the speaker had admitted the question at the motion, comes to say that he was throwing the motion. So you are not even being transparent.
Right,
why do you think that we're in the challenge?
So it appears
both
parties are digging their heels in. We can only pray that things, turn out well in Parliament and that things don't spill over or boil over once more. But thank you so much, Edward Bawa, Member of Parliament for Bongo, member of the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. Thank you so much for your time, sir. And Kojo Poku, thank you so much. Always refreshing interacting with you. Thank you for joining the conversation. We take a breather. When we return, of course, our Living Standard series. And of course, we're going to be hitting a fuel pump very close to you to find out what is happening there today, realistically. Do stay.